Hey, welcome to Sports and
Sports and stuff.
I am Nathan Anderson. I'm currently a senior here at ISU, Illinois State University, a Parks and Rec management major. I just consider one of my passions is sports, and I play rugby whenever I get the chance. And just like I feel like that I'm heavily involved in any opportunity I can give with sports. So, and sports and stuff. Turn over to you, so introduce yourself.
Yeah, so I'm Isela Valdez, also a rec management major here at Illinois State University. Sports is also another thing that I'm passionate about. Danced competitively in high school and continue to do so here in college, but I also just grew up watching baseball and football and stuff like that, so just always been an interest of mine. Yeah, so our first topic for today is the infamous and famous esports. That's one of the biggest trends going on right now in the sports industry. So, what's your opinion on esports?
Yeah, like you said, it's definitely a topic that's at the forefront of our profession right now. It's people are using it any way they can to get involved in their brand, and so I think that's why it's something that people need to start doing. It's a good socialization, I believe. I think it does require skill, and I think it has a lot of good qualities, and it's a trend that keeps moving up and up like extremely fast. So it seems like something that people should just jump on because everyone else is doing it, and everyone else enjoys it. It's where technology is moving. It's where our world's moving too. Mm-hmm. So I think to put it like if you're not jumping on this esports bandwagon, you're gonna be one in few that doesn't. So you might as well do it because everyone else is doing it. Everyone else is either at home doing it, so you might as well be an agency somewhere putting on some type of event or program for them to come play esports at your location.
Yeah, it's definitely.
Yeah, I can see it. I get hands steady. You do not feel the same.
Yeah, no, I don't like it. It's not like that. I think it's just the name. Like, the fact that it's called esports, that's what really throws me off. Because to me, personally, according to, I guess, my definition, since people are changing the definition of sport nowadays, but according to my personal definition, I guess, like, it's not a sport. Like, I understand, like, you're making, like, strategic, like, and intellectual decisions and stuff like that, but you're also sitting in a chair pressing buttons. And it's kind of crazy to me that these 15-year-old kids are like making millions of dollars off of this. And I mean, good for them, I guess, but I hope they're doing something good with that money. But esports, if it was called like e-gaming, I'd like totally be down. But yeah, it's just, I'm amazed at how much it blew up though, to be honest. Like, it's a huge industry now, like absolutely. But I think that's also because it's like online and stuff, it's more accessible to more people now. Like people are playing with people across like the whole world, and they don't necessarily have to be in the same room with them. So that is pretty cool. But
I just got to thinking. I like how we'll go back on your whole not being for it and your definition of sport there. I'll go back to that in a second. But I just like how you mentioned how it's it really is like on a huge rise and almost coming out of nowhere, but not necessarily because like. I mean, we're not too far behind from this current day and age, but we're in that part of the generation that had the aspects of going outside a lot, but also being involved in video games. You know, like there was Nintendo 64 before our time, and then PlayStation and Xbox pretty much essentially started blowing up while we're growing up. But I feel like there was no talks or hints of like an esports or competitiveness like this. I guess there maybe was some type of clubs in high school, but that's all it really was. Just that would be called a gaming club, like you're saying.
Yeah.
But I definitely wonder if it has something to do with our society getting away from those non-traditional things that our society is big on, like going outside, the 9 to 5, working, and because I remember like growing up when I was playing video games, my parents saw that to be almost of a waste of time.
Yeah.
And so, but maybe now that generation that was being told that video games are a waste of time, now parent kids that don't feel that way, so they don't teach them that, and so now all of a sudden gaming, there's more of like an importance behind that. There's more of a credit to it. You're no longer just a lazy
Yeah.
gamer on your,
Yeah.
you know, sitting on your butt at home
Yeah.
doing nothing.
Exactly. Yeah, my little brother, he's 19 right now. He's always been a gamer. He's loved playing video games ever since we were little, and now that he's also wanting to be in the sports industry, so he's like studying more of like sports communication in college. But this is something that he wants to get into. This is something that he would hope to like get a job in and like be in a career in. Like that to me, I'm like, oh my god,
Yeah.
you're so weird. But I mean, I get it. Like it's something that he's done since he was a little kid, and like now there's actually like an industry for it,
Yeah.
and now there's like a bigger community for it. So for him, like this was like awesome. You know, I don't think he ever thought growing up that he would get like a job doing this, but now it's an actual possibility.
Yeah. I remember growing up, if you love video games and passion for video games, the only option I remember hearing growing up was either being a video game developer or a tester.
Definitely.
And those two always seemed like almost impossible because, you know, with the computer background and programming, all that, and coding, and video game tests are just so hard, few in between, because so many people probably want to do that.
Yeah, exactly.
But now, that's why I believe that, like, when we first talked about esports, that it's such a big trend, everyone's doing it, like, everyone should jump on it because there's so many different windows and aspects to go to get into. Like, it opens a lot of doors for your brother, like, to go into. He could run tournaments and leagues. He could. There's just people who are good enough on YouTube, like getting paid to coach kids to get at video games.
That's
You
crazy.
could simply just sit there and stream, like you're during your free time or whatever, or if you're good enough to make it your professional time. Like, so that's why I think like the best thing that's probably one of the best things about esports is how like much it opens up. And to kind of go back to like what you said about like the definition of sport and stuff and all that is another thing I like about esports too is people are still stuck in that old generation thinking of like video gaming is you're not getting anything out of it, like it's pointless, you know, you're sitting at home by yourself, like that's like antisocial, like that's not like with online video gaming, like you're reaching so many different social platforms and interacting with people that you never would before in your life. So I think there's actually is a socialization benefit there. And then fine if you don't like that. What about like the town of Momo, for example, having an EA Sports club or an EA Sports gaming night where you would have like kids from different schools all over the area come into their area or into their recreation facilities and just play video games like with the kids in that same room, and they get to meet kids physically, like they're doing something they love, but they get that physical social interaction that the parents may want or search for.
Yeah, I think it's definitely opened up a lot more like programming in like our field, than, like recreation, and even in sport. Like in the sport industry, like esports makes money. So if you're not doing something for esports, then like you're kind of just like stupid because you could be like sports a business, so you could be making money.
Yeah, you're missing out on money.
All of that. So like I know like eventually I'm probably gonna be working with esports, and like I joked with my brother about it, saying like, yeah, I'll just hire you. You'll take care of it. I don't want to deal with it.
Yeah.
No, it's definitely something that I don't think is going to go away for a while. It's definitely, right now, I feel like it's still on the rise, but it's just going to be part of sport now. Like, it's something that right now we probably think is crazy, but in like 10 years from now, it's just going to be kind of like the norm.
Mm-hmm.
But
and I definitely feel and understand that whole getting tripped up on the definition of esports.
Yeah.
And when you're like when you hear that term esports, you're just like sports. So they're athletes. Like that's what people automatically go right to.
Yeah.
And e-gaming is a different alternative.
Yeah.
But one thing I've always just looked back on too is like, because you had the old classic debate like if is cheerleading a sport
or dancing sport.
I've
heard it my whole life.
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay. So and you would argue yes because that's physical exertion.
Exactly.
That's just social. That's like skill. Great skill it requires.
Like I can do what a gamer can do, but a gamer can't do what I can do. Like,
that's true.
Yes.
But could you do it as well as he could do?
I probably can't, but I could figure it out. Like
no, you could do it. Yeah, and
probably not as well.
He may not be able to do the splits or anything like that, but I'm sure he could bust a couple moves, but not as well as you can. You know, so.
So yeah, I see. Yeah.
So there definitely is like just like comparing sport to sport. Like it's just they all require different physical exertions. They all require different skills. Because as I'm looking in front of the sport definition here, the exact definition of sport is an activity involving physical exertion and skill in which an individual or team competes against another or others for entertainment. So I guess I could see that's why where people like, okay, well, there's no really physical exertion in video games.
Mm-hmm.
If it would have said and or skill, then boom, perfect, like set in stone.
Yeah.
Video games is a sport because it requires skill. But you will hear some arguments that video gaming is some type of physical exertion. Sitting all day and moving your thumbs isn't as easy and nice as it seems. You sweat, it gets hot, you get tired. I mean, it's not like I'm not running up and down the 40-yard line, doing 40-meter sprints. Like I'm not a big video gamer. I max spend like an hour at one specific time. I'm not spending no more than an hour playing. So I really can't test to sitting in front of a screen for 6 hours, because that's another thing, is that's what these video gamers that are really good at Fortnite and the kids who are winning, the kid won $3 million. Like, so that's another great aspect of this, like that money in there. And so kids like that or people like that, they're spending probably honestly at least 8 hours a day. Like that is a job. And so when I also thought about it too, is like, so maybe they're not a sport, but like those esports at that level of like leagues and that kid winning $3 million, if you won that big of a prize, you got to be professional at that, right?
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, I mean, I think what bothers me the most is like when, people consider these esports people to be athletes, and then they compare them to like a football player or like an NBA player or something like that. Like they say that the concentration and the skill level and the competitiveness is the same, when like there are key differences. Like they're not running up and down the field, they're not running up and down the court, and it's kind of annoying to me personally. But also, like, do you remember those X Games, like extreme sports?
Yeah, like snowboarding stuff?
Like snowboarding, like when people ride the bikes like on those big mounds and then just like what is it called, dirt biking and stuff like that.
Yeah, and BMXing.
Oh, now that's cool. Like I really wish I probably would have paid more attention to that like growing up, because I remember like seeing it on like Disney XD or whatever.
Yeah.
I think that should have gotten more attention than this has, or at least the same amount. Because if they're gonna go ahead and call it esports, and like I think that's called Games or X Games.
X Games,
that's what it's called. So I don't know.
Yeah, no, that those X Games and those extreme sports you're talking about, that's
legit.
That's really interesting to watch, and like amazing to see some of those athletes do the things that they do. And there's not quite a popularity behind that. I really don't know why.
I feel like when Tony Hawk was around, it was really up there. But
even then, like I want to at the level of like when Tony Hawk or like I know Sean Witt's another big snowboarder. Like when they were at those primes and people were talking about those type of athletes and those sports, I still wouldn't put it on the level like that our society views like baseball and football and stuff.
No, definitely not.
And I really I don't know, maybe I don't have a reason for that. I think it's partially to do with we're more into team-based games versus individual, like that like there's not quite that following.
Yeah. And also just like the level of exposure. Like obviously esports is getting all that exposure because everyone's connected to their phones, everyone's on their laptops, everyone is doing all this stuff. Like X Games, when that was big and stuff, we didn't have all this like social media and all of this like internet interaction stuff. So I feel like maybe if it were to like come out like in today's times, and it would also be like pretty up there.
Yeah, it definitely could be, especially how quick things go viral and stuff. Like like they're those big clips or something, or like a big clip of someone wiping out. Puts the sport on the map, and someone may watch it. I don't know. Like you said, esports isn't going away anytime soon. And like we mentioned before, it's something that it's just a trend that's going to keep going up. And if you're for it or against it, you just got to utilize it any way possible.
Especially if you're in the sports industry.
Yeah, it's another thing. You don't think it's a sport, but you've been referring to an awful lot about being in the sports industry.
Because it's in the sport industry already. Like I work for Campus Rec, and I work for the competitive sports and the intramural sports. They have a league now. Yeah. You can sign up for a league. Like that's not something that I decided. Yeah. If it was up to me.
Yeah.
Then,
no, you're right.
But at the same time, at a business point of view, like I'm gonna have to do it. Like, people I work for are gonna be like, how are you not going to implement this when it's so popular and it's going to make us all this money?
Yeah.
So yeah, and like ISU's, they're building like a whole new, not a whole new building. They're adding to a building to make this whole esports
like own separate rooms with all the games and everything.
Yeah,
or like,
which is crazy to me because like, no offense, we could be using that money for other things, but
yeah,
like,
and like it's just like that, no questions asked.
Exactly. Like I don't remember there being like a survey about this to the students. Like that's where Arts Mission is going. Like I would rather go to a multicultural center that's been in the talks about for years that hasn't been happening, or even to the art buildings. Like have you been in there lately?
The CVA, terrible.
They're absolutely trash. Like the plumbing is just bad. Like that's just something that is necessary. Like in general, like that's just something that should be regularly maintenance and stuff, and that's just terrible. And like,
wow,
ISU needs to get its priorities straight.
And that's just crazy how popular this esports is, and
and they're willing to jump on it so quickly.
See, I remember it's pretty much. I mean, maybe it's been in the talks for a while. Because I do remember hearing something briefly about it last year, but it almost seems like in the last 6 months that it was just from 0 to 100 real quick that we're getting in like an esports turn into a competitive league at the rec, and that we're getting a team where like it's gonna be a legit team against other universities, like part of a conference and all this. But I somehow never heard about that like facility. Like that's it seems like there were just no questions asked, no looking back, and just do it.
And it's the whole like they're trying to like as a university they're trying to appeal to new audiences and try to get those enrollment rates up. But those enrollment rates you saw this year.
Every year they break a record.
Every year they break a record. But this year they've had the most that they ever had in the fall because usually that's what happens. But do you know there's kids living in lounges in these dorms?
Yeah.
They don't even live in actual rooms.
Yeah.
And that's just because they want their numbers up. And like that's ridiculous. Like if that would happen to me, like I would leave. Like I don't want to live at a university and not have a room. Like that's what I'm paying for. And they're paying the same prices as living in a dorm to living in a lounge with like 6 other people, as opposed to either like a quad with 4 or like a double with 2 people.
Yeah, that's literally all that attendance record every year is just a statistic that they can promote and market, and I think you're adding new people to this big, awesome university, which Illinois State is a good university. They just have some flaws, and
should we build like another dorm building?
Yeah,
if they want to keep their enrollment rates up.
I know, because I remember my freshman year was I think the first class that like broke the attendance record and like started that wave of every year after that of breaking the record. And my freshman year we have kids living in the dorm room and stuff, and that is esports that took away an option for us to go hang out there and play games and potentially have a TV in there and play video games with other floors and members and stuff. So that was like a frustrating part. But I remember because they start off the year there in the room and the lounges because all the other dorms are full. And then eventually they could potentially get moved out to different dorms, and that's what ISU doesn't talk about either with their high enrollment rates freshman year. They don't talk about how many of those freshmen just drop out.
Exactly.
I don't know how many of them are, but I know that my freshman year, majority of the lounges became open because either roommates left, like had switched rooms, people dropped out, people left, people got kicked out, like, and then all those things happen. But like, I definitely every I think that's been going on 4 or 5 years with kids living in the lounges and still have yet to do anything about it. But it goes back to that esports building. They got a new esports building coming soon.
It's connected to I think Julian Hall. That's like right across from the Alamo. That's where all the construction is going on right now. But yeah, it's just like I know Wesleyan had a like sports league already. Just like other universities around. So it's just them trying to stay relevant and trying to, keep up with the trends and stuff. And like, it's crazy.
I don't know. One thing to talk about, kind of like going into that, is about how it just goes to how our society views sports, and we just put that on a different pedestal. And there's certain things that wouldn't be acceptable in an everyday life, but when it comes to sport and that context of sport, you kind of give a leeway, you give a pass, or you just don't think twice about it. And to kind of go into our next topic, I think goes perfectly with mental health of like athletes, and we're going to talk about a wide range of athletes. We can talk about professional athletes because there's a lot of professional athletes that came out vocal about their mental health issues. College athletes are probably one of the more targeted audience with this debate, and just because of their pressure, and then we could even go as far as kids. Sometimes we often don't think that kids would have like mental health issues as far as like depression and anxiety, all that, but unfortunately those they do happen, and
especially at younger ages nowadays too.
And for the most part, it's at least in context within sport, it's all due to the pressure.
Yeah,
and
definitely the pressure. Because I think like for me, sports, it was like a stress reliever. You know, like it like actually helped my mental health and stuff. But once things started to get a little competitive, it's definitely it takes a toll on you. Like you get stressed out about certain things, and especially like if you're in high school, like you have all these classes to worry about and stuff. Like you're in college, that's even worse because most of your time is spent on this sport. Yet you have to like continue to pass your classes and worry about how you're paying your tuition. Like if you don't have a scholarship, or it's definitely even like in professional sports, like especially like men, like they're not supposed to be seen as like weak or like sad or like crying or anything like that. So like the fact I know there's been a few athletes like Michael Phelps talked about his depression. Brandon Marshall, I think too, also opened up about kind of like.
But I believe he dealt with bipolar. That's what he talked about a lot. I know he was big with that. His colors of the cleats all times standing out for that. Yeah, and those are like for like thinking in like I guess in like the male side of things, like those people are like huge like mentors and like role models and idols for like these young athletes and these even like if they're not athletes, like these young boys, So I feel like that's really important that the athletes are talking about that kind of stuff. And I think mental health, just in general, since we've gotten more information about it recently, and like we see that it's more common than we thought it was, that has really helped it become like a huge like trend, like in every like industry. Like people are talking about it like all the time. Like even in class the other day, we talked about having like mental health days like off of work. Like so, it's become a huge like just topic everywhere. And we see it in sport like all the time, and we may not have even realized it like growing up and stuff. Yeah, I like how you mentioned that we're talking about it more and more, and like being and having each other more aware of it. You talked about like having those mental breaks. Like through this internship process with Lindsay and everybody, our professors talk about putting our best foot forward, expectations, and doing our best, like making ourselves look good, making sure the university looks good as well, and really just working hard in this internship. But like Lindsay has emphasized, make sure personal life. If you're stressed out or you need a break or something, you've been at your desk for a couple hours. You stand up and walk around for 5 minutes. You don't eat your lunch at your desk because you'll never eat your lunch, or you'll always just be doing work that way. So it's just because there is always an importance with sports and work and life and stuff. But we often sometimes forget about our personal well-being, and I think you touched on the head too perfectly. Is with it's more so pertained to men, but it's even to females as well. It's just that to both genders, like when people start talking about their mental health issues or any issues they're really facing, is that the first assumption is, well, no one cares. Like no one wants to hear it. Like so, like that's always the first assumption. That's always what you thought you heard. But that's not the case, because everybody in this world needs someone to talk to, and everyone. If someone needs someone to talk to, then you got to be that person to also listen once in a while. And you understand that important aspect of it as well. And then this philosophy with sport and men as well is that that big macho-ness, and especially with sport, like toughen up or sayings like that and stuff. Really like
you get down, you get back up.
Exactly. Like puts the barrier on opening up, and almost like it seems like when you open up, you're exposing yourself when you're becoming weak, and like it's obviously not like something you want to do in sport. But it's something that I think we keep talking about more and more, and keep people that are aware of it and how important this topic is, and how important like relief is, and tools and coping mechanisms that it's okay to talk about. Mental health was a taboo subject. Honestly, probably even 10 years ago. Like it was definitely. Like it's still a semi-taboo subject. People are still afraid to talk about it once in a while. But it's still still be a battle because no one wants to talk about their problems. But
Yeah.
I think as long as big role models like you mentioned, Michael Phelps. I know I'm almost positive Dwayne Wade has came out about his mental health issues as well. And at least I know for him on that aspect of being an athlete is the expectations and that structure of just waking up, doing morning workouts, breakfast, going to the game and practicing, and then the game, and but that life away from sport where you don't have that structure, you don't have to go to that morning workout, you don't have to go to practice, and so you often see like that. So that happens to high school athletes when they don't no longer play high school sports, or college athletes who no longer play college sport, and they miss their shot at the professional, and then obviously it happens with professionals once they retire. That removing themselves away from sport takes a mental toll on them as well.
Definitely, it's part of their identity, and like, I know we talked about this in I think one of Tony's classes. Like as a young athlete and even as a professional, like sport, if that's like all you care about for a while, and like if that's all you're taught to like care about, it becomes part of your identity. And once you lose that, like you said, like you don't get into the college you wanted, you don't get that like scholarship, or like after you retire, like you lose a sense of self because it's part of who you thought you were. And especially like you mentioned how our society just has so much pressure on these like athletes and on sports, and like how important it is. Like they forget that these athletes are people, like they're human beings, they have bad days just like we do, like and so I think that with social media and stuff, like it's important to like maybe like show like these bad days every once in a while. It's okay to be vulnerable. Like everyone's vulnerable.
Yeah.
Like, and these athletes are supposed to be like the elite like people in the world, but like they're fucking people. Oh,
yeah.
Sorry. But like we're all people, and I feel like it's the U.S. too. Like I don't think like we mentioned in class as well. Like the U.S. just puts so much on sports, like as our culture. And like compared to other countries, like the amount of scrutiny that these athletes get is ridiculous. And like they're opening up about depression. You're like, damn, I didn't realize it. Like really, like you didn't realize it. Like all these like the pressure that they go through from fans, like let alone just having to live day to day like with that pressure. Like it's crazy.
Mm-hmm. No, I feel the same way. That at the end of the day, they're people because they have an extraordinary talent, or they usually an extraordinary work ethic that led them to where they're at, and because of our society, we put, like you said, we put these athletes at that elite level, and we put like sports and games at that elite level and expectations. We just kind of forget that they are human, and because at the end of the day, like they are just you and me. They just so happen to have that work ethic and drive and talent that got them to where they're at. So. Like some days we're not going to perform well at our job. That happens to athletes. They're not going to perform their best at their job. We go through mental breakdowns. They go through mental breakdowns. But we're blind to the fact that they are human at the end of the day, just because of that high pedestal. And you talked about it too. It's our society view on sports as well. I know that a lot of other countries, like I know soccer has a huge following, and all other countries, and I saw stadiums with fans burning stuff, and like so. Yeah. There are other countries and societies that have like this crazy view on sport, but ours is extreme. And same thing with the college athletes as well. Like these athletes aren't even like they're student athletes. We put that pressure and that expectation of the student athlete. That student is first. They're supposed to have those well-maintained GPAs and test scores and all that, but also too they're supposed to go out and practice 8 hours a day and come and perform at a national level, and I think there's just high expectations are almost
I definitely I don't think that whole like student athlete like in like college sports and like collegiate sports and all is taken as seriously as it should be, like especially with the whole popularity of it. Like they're mostly there for their sport. Like if anything, they're literally athletes who just happen to go to college. Like the way that's the way that they're treated is what I'm trying to say. yeah, and so some athletes are really there just for their sport, and like that's okay. Like if that's their plan and that's part of it, then okay. But like for these people, like some of them actually do want their degree, and like just having that added pressure to it, it's ridiculous. Knowing that they're seen as athletes and they're seen as like just dollar signs, like in this industry, and not as like students. Yeah, that's another thing too.
That's like such a it's a heavy workload. Like me personally as a student, and then right now I don't currently work, but when I used to work and go to school at the same time, that was hard in itself.
Yeah.
And being an athlete is almost as if you're having a job, probably honestly even more hours than having an actual job.
Yeah.
So that balance that they're going through is hard. There are a lot of good schools that do the best to help relieve that balance, and especially if the schools are more athlete focused than student. But I think that like you said, our society views them as athlete first, but student second, and so that's why we have those high athlete expectations. But the schools and our NCAA system, that's the student is supposed to be first, so they have all the rules and regulations for the student first, and that gets in the way of like them being an athlete, and gets in the way of them being a student. So it's just like a constant cycle of just almost failure.
Yeah.
Just setting them up for
Definitely.
failure.
It's a vicious cycle. It's not something that's productive at all.
Mm-hmm. And then we talked about like the taboo, I guess, of mental health and the elephant in the room that nobody really wants to speak of. I found it weird that this Athletes for Hope.org website here says that 35% of elite athletes suffer from a mental health like crisis or manifest. That could be like stress, eating disorder, burnout, depression, anxiety, and stuff like that. And elite athlete is at a professional level because they have college athletes. Only 10% is what they have recorded for college athletes.
Yeah.
I find that hard to believe.
I also find that hard to believe. I think it's almost, I don't want to say every college athlete, but
in some capacity.
Definitely at some capacity. Like it may not even be like a huge like diagnosis of certain things, but I mean, people get anxiety about everything. Like stress is huge in universities and in college. Like that takes a huge toll on you. That's an interesting statistic. I don't think.
I think that's
I wonder like how they went about
underrepresented.
Yeah.
And then maybe
that's another thing too. Like people, that could also be because they want people to like shut up about it. Like.
Yeah.
But I know like we were talking about. I think we talked about this a little bit in Becky's class. But this is a whole like profession now too. Like being like the team psychologist.
Yeah.
So that's another thing that I feel like is cool. I feel like that's necessary. Like even like collegiate team should have like a psychologist that they're able to like talk to, even if like they're not diagnosed with anything like that. They should see them probably at least once a week just to like talk through things. Like sometimes it's good to talk to people who you don't necessarily know because you feel less judged that way, and like it's just a conversation at that point.
Yeah.
It's just seen more as a conversation, and it's seen more normal.
Mm-hmm. Actually, I like that idea a lot. Like, I'm sure there are like some type of team psychiatrist already there.
Mm-hmm.
But I would like it almost as if I was a head coach or like in some type of control of some team. I would like if someone in the facet of like working as like a counselor or a psychiatrist within my team, but they're more or less like they're there for like scheduled appointments and drop-ins weekly. But they're also like a part of like almost as part of the coaching staff to where they're like during practices and games hanging out with them and like just talking to them and asking how they're feeling and getting them to work through their emotions and stuff like that. But like with that being said, like they're kind of almost tied to the coaching staff, but not really. They don't have any super obligations to the athletic department or the coaching staff to where they could get like miscued information and like a misjudgment like with that pressure of that athlete that we're talking about. And so they don't, so if they did present a problem like to them, they didn't care about it.
Yeah. All right, we're back. Some technical difficulties. Yeah, we're just gonna move on to our next topic because we don't really know where we left off. We're talking about a little bit about social injustice in sports and in the sport industry. I know we talked about this in Becky's class, and I did a whole presentation on like racism that's been going on in like high school sports, which is very like heartbreaking to me because high school is like where I found out that like I love sports and stuff. So like hearing about all these incidences where these athletes are either being treated poorly by their coaches, by like officials, or even by their own like teammates or like other athletes from different schools. Like it's heartbreaking to hear, but yeah.
Yeah, it's definitely really discouraging to hear, especially like kids, like middle schoolers, high schoolers, even. I'm assuming I don't have a specific example I've heard of, but the way sports are, I would not put it past me at some elementary kid level. There's been something utterly disrespectful said. That's just unfortunately the society and the world we live in, where you just can't rule something like that out. I think I don't know. It's not necessarily an answer for why why it happens, but I think largely because of the expectations we have, like for some of our professional athletes and how they're supposed to handle themselves.
Yeah.
And like the level that we put them at, it encourages fans to seem like that things that they say are okay.
Yeah.
Which is definitely not okay. Like as you said, at the high school level, there'd be, I know there's two different student sections, and there'd be like racist chants like going back and forth from each other.
Yeah.
That are just terrible. I don't know, like, because if you would hear something like that from someone's mouth, for the most part, you would think like that's not right, that's not okay. At least that's my first assumption.
Mm-hmm.
But when you're in that sports setting and in the crowd, like, no one, for the most part, like bats an eye and just thinks it's okay.
Yeah, definitely. But yeah, that kind of goes into like having these like professional athletes like speaking out about like issues that they care about. What do you think about that?
I think that's fantastic. One of the big things of racism in our country, and when it comes to sport and in sport especially, is the platform.
Yeah.
For the most part, people of minority are not in a position of power, and that's due to institutionalized like racism that there is. That just they don't. When you have like people that aren't a minority that are in a position of power, they don't know how to like relate and don't understand, and they are pretty much just ignorant and just don't. They may not be doing it on purpose, but they just, for lack of better terms, they just have no idea, can't relate and don't understand. So that's why there's no, for the most part, people minority that are in those positions, and so it's definitely got to use any platform that you can. You hear with LeBron, when a reporter, I believe, told him to shut up and dribble, and like that's right away, he just was definitely not going to do that, because that's just like he worked for that platform, and he does like great things with it, with his power and his money, and so I think that's one thing, like one person may or may not be able to change like the racism in our society, but just keep that stuff in mind when you get in that position of power is what I always tell people.
Yeah.
It's like how you make your decisions and you move and think about other people and think about other races and classes and stuff, and how those decisions affect them.
Yeah, definitely. I think, like you said, I definitely agree with these professional athletes, like speaking out about issues that they care about. Like I know, like personally, when like the whole Colin Kaepernick thing happened, like I didn't realize all of like, I mean, I knew about police brutality and stuff like that, but I didn't understand like the severity of it, and like how common it was, and how like for me, like it was something that was new, but this isn't new. It's something that's been happening for years, and that's what was important, I think, about it, is that it's brought so much awareness to the issue, and even like it's also helped me like realize the NFL like sucks, like for like its athletes and like representing, especially their athletes of like color, and like most of their athletes, majority of their athletes are athletes of color, and knowing that they don't support them and they don't allow them like opportunities to like grow and like more opportunities even after they're like being retired and stuff like that. Like it's crazy. It's like it's ridiculous. But yeah, I think it kind of goes back to like earlier I mentioned like these athletes are people. Like I know people get upset when they talk about these like political issues or like just issues that matter to them, and it's like, well, again, they are human and like these things affect them just as much as they affect us. And the fact that they're using their platform like in a good way, in a positive way, I think is very beneficial, especially to like the youth athletes. Like I've seen like after the whole Colin like Kaepernick thing, you've seen like youth leagues like they took a knee like when the national anthem is being played, and like that this is something that's being like taught to young athletes, like super young athletes, and I think that that's good. It's for them to be aware that this can happen to them. Like this whole like injustice thing is very real to them, especially in today's world.
To go off of that, like that it's that the athletes are, like Colin Kaepernick are, taking knees and like standing up for like their social injustice and their inequality that they're facing. And one thing that you kind of touched on is that them stepping up and like doing something about it, it shows that it's happening to them too. Because in normal local level life and like where it seems like you're just a nobody and you're getting pushed down and put down, you think, oh well, this is just how life is, and you just keep going through it. And you don't look for change, you just accept it. But when you realize that it happens to almost virtually everybody of color, even somebody in that position of power and money that they have, like that they still are being mistreated and still like not shown the equality that they deserve. I think because that's why athletes are standing up, that they're just not being shown this equality. And I started thinking about, because I read something because I was thinking about Kyle Korver's when I chosen the debate topics. I read something about Kyle Korver's white privilege speech that he made for the NBA, and he said that 77% of the league is made up of color, of people of color. And but they're one of the most underrepresented groups.
Definitely.
Not like in the world and in the NBA as well. So it's like, that's crazy. I just couldn't think of it. This article that I found, out of the 3 biggest U.S. sports leagues, which is basketball, football, and baseball, there are only 6 people of color who are owners. So there's only 2 NFL owners that are people of color, and then I believe there's 1 or 2 in the MLB, and then the same thing with the NBA. And so
it's ridiculous. Like these people make up this organization literally. Like how is it that you think it's okay for them to be underrepresented? Like they need that representation, and it's not even in terms of like huge like owners of like these teams. It's like even like the coaches, like having coaches that like more diverse coaches, like that's just more beneficial to everyone. And I know we talk about diversity a lot, like just in our field. Like diversity is amazing. Like diversity helps, it improves things. Like it, like 100%. And that's why you can see like the fall of the NFL, like kind of in a way. Like they're not doing. I mean, obviously they're still fine, but like people are like not as, their viewership has gone down.
People are moving away from it.
And even like there's been people who refuse to perform at the Super Bowl because they're like in, they're with like Colin Kaepernick and stuff like that. So I feel like that's also a really cool thing that we have going on. But also like the representation matters like so much. Like it's, people don't even realize it, and like we've seen it with, again, this a little off topic, but when Black Panther came out, like oh my god, like it was just amazing. And like obviously they're saying like, oh, of course sales are gonna go up and stuff like that. Like, and there was another movie, Crazy Rich Asians, that the whole cast was Asian, and like those movies did really well. And why did they do really well? Because there's people who look like those people who want to see themselves in a movie. Like, it's not like people are surprised, and I'm like, you shouldn't be surprised. Like, these movies should have been happening like years ago. Like, it definitely matters. And like I said, like, we need more representation in these more professional like fields, so that they're represented, and they're represented well. And that's what it is. Like, they need to be represented well.
Yeah, that's definitely one thing too. I think we learned in an inclusion recreation class. Why can I not think of her name? Holy crap!
Rebecca?
No, inclusion with Sherry. There you go, Sherry. Oh, sorry, Sherry.
I didn't have
You didn't have Sherry's class?
No, I didn't.
Well, Sherry's class, she taught. You took inclusive rec though.
Yeah, I took it with another professor.
Okay, sorry.
No, it's okay.
But yeah, so we learned in inclusive rec that one way to help to change that is like what you're talking about is that reputation. We need to get people of minority and color involved in that reputation, involved in that thinking, that process of like rec and like the needs and like the wants that they have. We just need to start having compassion and understand like their point of view. And like you said too, we have diversity. There's many benefits from the different experiences, different cultures. Our country and world is being more diverse than ever is before. They say within the next generation there's going to be like the minority races are going to be the majority races. Like the one,
which makes me happy.
Yeah, the one race is not going to be the majority. Yeah, and you talked about too is with the Black Panther and how like that reputation like gravitated a lot of following, like huge following, and people were able to relate to it. They saw like characters and people and like themselves in like big huge roles. That was fantastic, great to see. And one thing I did not like about when that movie was coming out is that I'm maybe misinterpreting my definition here, but that cultural appropriation of like when I'm hearing people say, well, of course it's going to be popular, like all the minorities, all the black people, all the Hispanics are going to go see that movie. It's like, well, why is that not okay? Like, this is something they could relate to. This is, they come and flock to a Ben Affleck movie, so they come and flock to a Leonardo DiCaprio movie. So why is it okay for those movies to be popular but not other movies with people of color? Yeah. So I think it's just something that people need to be more aware of and conscious of, and they may not. From some people may not mean it in like a malicious way, but I think they just definitely need to start realizing the magnitude of their words and the effect that they have.
Yeah, it's a lot of ignorance is what it is. Yes. And I know like there's more representation in like TV shows nowadays. Like obviously not enough, but still slightly a little bit more with like LGBTQ like plus and stuff like that. And I know I saw a comment once where it was like, they already have the right to get married. Why do I need to see this now? Yeah. And I'm like, what do you mean? Like that first of all, that was just a stupid comment, and I'm like, this is what the world looks like. Like, exactly. Like, they already have this. Like, you're shoving gayness down my throat, and I'm like, no, like, no.
Heterosexualness is throughout every single movie and TV show that we in our society.
Exactly.
That's why is one okay? Why is one thing okay and the other not? That's one thing I never understood. Of people that are so one-sided, and you saying that shoving gayness down my throat is I watching Game of Thrones, and I was watching Game of Thrones with a buddy of a buddy, and he said something about a gay scene, and I was just like, why does it matter?
Yeah.
Like we literally just the scene before that was a guy and a girl having sex. Like why we didn't say anything about that one.
Yeah.
But so I think it's just unfortunately all that's not. It's it's starting to become normal. It's starting to be more and more acceptable. Yeah. But unfortunately, that damage of it not being acceptable or not being talked about, we're still repairing from that.
Yeah, definitely still have a long way to go.
Yeah, we're slowly moving to equality amongst LGBTQ and minorities. Like you said, it's the big thing that once we begin our professional fields is don't let things slide. A lot of times in our society, people just shut up and keep moving. There's obviously a right place and right time for that, but
Yeah.
then there's a right place and right time to say something and make a stand and make a correction and change someone's views, change someone's philosophy. Get the minority population represented, put them in position of power. When I was in New Zealand, you were with me as well, so we have.
We were in New Zealand.
When we were in New Zealand, sorry, I'm often too used to just saying I. When we were in New Zealand, we had a lot of close interactions with our classmates there and our professors. And I remember having a conversation with a professor and a student there, and the student was part of the minority population. We talked about the misunderrepresentation. We talked about this before the podcast about athletic directors and athletic offices, how there's rarely people of color in those offices.
Yeah.
And the unfortunate thing too is, so it's in our society, it's white male, white people. Then you have the females, and then it's minorities. Then it's minority females.
Yeah.
Minority females are going to be the last because you have two barriers. You're a female and you're a minority. So sorry, Sella, but so that's what me and the professor and the student talked about, because that student fell under that woman and minority category as well. And but as we were talking about that, and she just seemed a little disheartened and discouraged, and she already knew that. She's lived that life and she was aware of that.
Yeah.
But I guess like hearing that from the both of us, just like hit her hard at that specific point in time. But as we kept talking about it, is we are progressing forward and making changes and trying to change that for the better, and we are aware of it. Me and the professor are both white, and we are aware of that. We understand that, and we understand how wrong that is.
Yeah.
So for that student, the positive out of that is when we get in positions of power, we could do something about it.
Yeah.
When she becomes a position of power, she could do something about it.
Yeah.
So I always say that, like, I hope that I could, when I get in a position of power, I could change that. Like, if I have two candidates right then and there, like, for a position that's gonna be vital and important for my company, I'm hopefully not gonna make that decision based off of like race. But if I saw the one person was more qualified and more like, and that person was awesome, like they fit the job perfect, and they happen to be minority, that would be like a win-win. Like that would be like that would be awesome in my book.
Yeah, there's definitely a right and wrong way to do it. Like with the NFL, we're talking about the Rodney Rule.
Yeah.
How it's like mandatory for them to interview at least like one or like at least a few people of color, but it doesn't like that's all it requires. So it's not doing anything because it's just something that they're checking off.
Yeah.
Like they're not actually hiring these people, whether they're qualified or not. So it's not really doing anything. But yeah, it's something that I've been thinking about lately too. Like as a senior, hopefully going to grad school and eventually like being in the field. Like my friend Allie, she did a presentation on like women athletic directors, and there was only about like 10% in the U.S. who are like D1 and like maybe I think 30% total, but most of those are like white women, and so yeah, I'm lucky where I'm physically white, so hopefully like it's not like a huge issue. Well, I mean not like hopefully, but it's just not as seen as a big issue because I'm seen as kind of like the majority until I start talking and I'm like, no, like I want you to know like
my culture.
That, my culture, and like I want it to be known. Like I'm not just like a minority like pick, you know what I mean? Like I have like value here, and like and I want to continue to like spread that in my career too. Like I would want to work more with like kids in like an underrepresented like high school, like where we went to high school. It was mostly like minorities that went there, like to help them and like to encourage them to be up there, like I wanted to be an athletic director because I saw my athletic director at high school was Miss Epson. She was a female, and I was like, that's awesome. Like I didn't know I could do that, and so that's what I want to be, that person for someone else. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And just like encouraging like younger kids to like, even though the statistics are really bad, just keep like pushing for it, because you may be a statistic for a while, but hopefully in the future it won't be seen that way anymore.
Yeah, and we talk about it's a slow progression. You know, we came a long way where we were in the early 1900s and 1800s and 60s, which 60s, 70s, not that far off, only 40, 50 years ago.
Definitely.
So we come a long way from there, you know, but we're still making slow progress, and it's just like you said, is that being that inspiration and change and that educational tool for other people. So, you know, if people could apply this to anything in life, you know, you just really try to make some small impacts here and there throughout your life and throughout your career, and then those impacts could get pushed onto someone else, and then they could make an impact, and then on to the next line, next person, and then it's just hopefully creates a positive cycle. And so that's kind of hopefully the positive cycle that will create this the social justice that our world is facing in sports and our recreation field. And yeah, you talk about it too, is that, like, you know, when you want from what I understood from what you said about your perceived appearance of what people would assume maybe that you're white, but then when you obviously you could hear your accent and your culture,
my name sometimes.
your name, so your culture comes out, but it's something that you said that, like, hopefully you don't get that that first judgment interview and job like, oh, she's Hispanic, like, you know, so that's why you kind of, like, you don't necessarily hope, but that's, I guess, the one takeaway you have of kind of semi-looking white enough. But that's just definitely an unfortunate thinking. You have to go through and, like, because people do have that pre-decision or precognitive assumption about someone when it comes to a race like that. And that's why, like, when I said something about, like, if I was in a position of power choosing a position and I had those two candidates, like, that's why for the most part, like, I wouldn't want to know the race, or I'm heavily in, like, a minority family members and a minority community and friends, like, the high school that we grew up in, so I understand my white privilege, and for the most part, I say that I don't see color. I really don't. I understand that it's there. Like, I know the different culture aspects that and the different tools that each person and each group brings. But so that's why, like, I definitely, like, if I was in position of power and choosing those two interview candidates, I wouldn't be choosing the one minority just because they are a minority and giving them that shot, or trying to make my agency look good. You know, make those numbers that ISU does. You know, so I'm definitely not into that, because those numbers are skewed, and those numbers are only to make people look good on paper, and it's just very fake. It's no real change being done there. Like, so that's something that I've for sure 100% will always avoid. Like.
Definitely.
But
like, using our privilege to better, like, other people, and to, like, inform other people, and using our privilege like, as a platform to raise awareness for other people who may not have that. You know what I mean? That's definitely something.
So hopefully we could in the right step. And that's why, like, sports in our society is such a big thing, and each topic we talked about has the fundamental of sports, but we have such a large impact in this field. And so I think that's why Isel and Isel, of course, mainly came up with this idea. This would be perfect to do this podcast, so we don't have to ideas from one another. And because that's another reason why we do sports and stuff, because it's not
sports and stuff.
It's not all just about sports.
There's other stuff that goes into it. We've talked about so many other issues: mental health, race, like all these crazy things. But of course, sports. Try to just bring it back to sports. So
hope you like sports and stuff.
Yeah, thank you for tuning into our podcast.
Thanks, Steph.